$1 billion has been liquidated from the crypto markets in the past 60 minutes. Welcome back to the Crypto ZX channel, to the XRP family. Appreciate all the love. Let's take a look at what's going on. As you can see across the board, major amount of retracement, as we could see across the board. Everything at this point is being impacted. I'm sure if you watch some of my other updates, you guys should be, aware as to what's happening. If not, if you only focus on the XRP updates, no problem. We're going to talk about what's going on. You can see XRP's price down 9.1%, but there's a lot of other coins down double digits. And that, speaks for itself as to, how big of a deal this really is. But let's take a closer look and see what's happening. Before we do that, though, as always, just a quick disclaimer: anything on this channel is not financial advice. Always do your own due diligence and research when you are investing in crypto. So, XRP's price right now, $1.93, so sitting below $2 price point, also down 1.4% on the Bitcoin side of things. Valuation $115.5 billion, and the 24-hour trading volume at 7.6 billion. And what also ended up happening is that the broader market cap of the entire crypto space has gone below $3 trillion. But speaking about that, I want you guys to focus on this right here. $1 trillion has been wiped out from the US stock market. So, the equity market saw a major retracement yesterday, and $1 trillion in terms of valuation that has been just completely gone out of the, stock market cap. So now you make the comparison to crypto, and you really start to understand how small of a space and the market it really is. Of course, the biggest misunderstanding that I hear a lot, especially from people that are early comers in the space, or even the newcomers, that take a look back at the previous price patterns, going back a few years or going back a decade. Guys, we need to understand a decade is not a small period. That's 10 years. And 10 years ago, the entire landscape, even 7, 8 years ago, the entire landscape for crypto was completely different compared to where it's at now. It was labeled as wild, wild west for a reason back in the day. And now, obviously, you're seeing so much happening. But $3 trillion market cap, and now you're comparing it to the likes of gold, you're comparing it to the likes of, the equity markets. We're nothing compared to that, and that really tells you how early this market still is. And obviously, if you're comparing it to how much we've seen in terms of just liquidation, we saw about $1 billion in liquidation. But as far as the market cap is concerned, that we've seen a retracement of, we're looking at about 120 billion. But of course, this was from earlier. I think we'd be around 140 billion right now. So take a look at this. Fear and greed index is at 6. We have not seen this much fear, within the crypto space, I would say, for a long, long time. And again, going back to what I say in every single update right now, there is not much interest, and it speaks for itself. Again, I've mentioned this in my other updates as well. As a content creator, I see it firsthand. Engagement has been really low, and I've been noticing, a lot of other content creators, are also, feeling that, and that's pretty much what, a lot of them are also saying. And that just tells you that there's not much interest right now in the crypto space. So now you guys might be asking, well, I'm still here, what's going on? But if you're still here, as I say, give yourself a pat on the back, because not a lot of people are paying attention to crypto. But time and time out, again, like I said, I'm looking at it from like a 10-year horizon. If you kind of go back 10 years, I've seen these major pullbacks. I've seen, bear markets before. Gains are never obviously promised. That's where you need to do your due diligence research and invest what you can afford to lose. And then your patience is your number one key to follow. But people that are paying attention, building their portfolio, dollar cost averaging in around times like this, where there's so much fear across the board, in the long term perspective, those are the ones that do tend to do good. I've seen it in the past, and I still strongly believe that. Obviously, that comes down to picking the right coins, picking the right portfolio. You're not just going to be picking one single coin in your portfolio. You want to have a diversified portfolio. And I also stated this, I think, in my Solana update, if I'm not mistaken. If you are building your portfolio, what I would suggest you guys to do is, look closely to coins that have been very strongly correlated with, Bitcoin. And there are a lot of them. There's a lot of coins that are, very positively correlated with Bitcoin. And that did still end up performing really good. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to name any here. That's where your due diligence and research comes into play. But I would suggest people start looking at, projects that move with Bitcoin standards. I'm very optimistic on Bitcoin, obviously in the long perspective. As you guys know, I'm still very optimistic on a lot of utility projects in the long term perspective, and memes as well. I don't think meme coins are going anywhere, but again, look at it for yourself. A lot of people don't understand meme coins don't bring any utility. Obviously, you need to understand how the meme coin market works and take a look at it for yourself. There's literally, I would say, 98 to 99% of the meme coins in the crypto space right now from their all-time highs are down 99% or 98%. And that tells you everything you need to know about meme coins. Of course, when things really turn around, you pick the right meme coin, things can, go crazy. But the risk factor associated with them is just absolutely insane. And I think, retail interest is also very low due to that because a lot of retail just started going after the meme coin industry, and obviously due to that, and due to obviously there's a lot of coins that do not do good in the long term. I think a lot of retail did not end up doing good, and then it's just been completely sidelined for quite some time. But I think you're going to see that structure playing out once again, and you're going to see the market kind of flowing back in. Obviously, as far as quantitative easing is concerned, that is supposed to be starting soon, and that is where I start to look very closely to the market and seeing, last cycle we saw quantitative easing, starting, and that's where liquidity came into the markets massively. You saw what happened with crypto space. You saw what happened with, the equity markets. But what a lot of people will still overlook is crypto market still saw a bull run this year. I could list so many coins that have gone up tremendously. And yes, as far as the broader altcoin season is concerned, haven't really seen it. That's why we focus on the dominance every single day of the week. But again, if you pick the right portfolio, if you pick the right coin, you still did end up doing quite well for yourself. And obviously, lock in the profits. That is, a very important factor as well. So again, in terms of the market itself, altcoins down substantially. And with Bitcoin, pulling down, believe it or not, Bitcoin is still in this upward trend. I know it's crazy to think about that because if you're looking at the broader market and seeing what's going on, you might be thinking, crypto market is just going down and down and down and down. But when you zoom out and take a look at Bitcoin on the daily perspective, you look at it on a weekly time frame, it just really opens your eyes to really understand that Bitcoin, when you zoom out, is still in a bullish trend. So that is something I don't want you guys to neglect. And as far as the targets are concerned, you guys can see for yourself, we did obviously end up retesting the $86,000 price point. But after that, you saw the price, pull back down to the 61.8, and this is where that initial liquidation really occurred. If you're looking at it on a lot of charts on a lot of coins, you'll notice this wick forming. So is this wick going to fill in? I wouldn't be surprised if it does because, we're sitting below the 61.8 key support line, and that could definitely be on the table, but you just don't want to see the price dropping below this key range, as I said in every other update of mine. But let's take a look at the ETF flows. Very, very interesting things. Obviously, we know Bitwise ETF went live. Look at what Chad says. For Canary, 3 million XRP acquired. For Bitwise, most of it, because it's day one, around 8 to 10 million XRP. Tomorrow, we could see about 10 to 15 million XRP total acquired by ETFs. Pretty much when it comes to ETFs, people that buy ETFs, you need to understand these issuers go out and buy the actual native token, which is, of course, XRP in this example. And I know the question that I see a lot of confusion on, well, if people or, in this case, institutions going on, a big spree to buy XRP, why is the price of XRP not going up? Number one is the broader market conditions. You just cannot ignore it. Number two, these big institutions, and in this case, we're talking about Canary and Bitwise, they're not going on centralized public trade, exchanges like Binance, KuCoin, whatever the case may be, or Coinbase. They're not going there to buy their, XRP. They're buying it OTC. They buy these trades off of OTC, and that's why you don't see that reflect on the price. But this is where that supply draining factor comes into play, where people are getting excited that, some of these Binance exchange overall, reserve for XRP has been, declining quite a bit. So what's really happening? Is it OTC that are, withdrawing XRP for, all these ETFs going live? That could be the case. That definitely could be the case. But these are things that we want to kind of keep in mind. But what's even more interesting right now during these market conditions is what Bitwise ETF inflows was able to pull. $105 million inflow. That is actually amazing in my opinion. Like, that is well beyond my expectations. I was not expecting, maybe I was thinking 20, 30 million, to be honest, but it exceeded my expectations massively, you could see. So now you guys are probably wondering, crypto zx, what do these numbers mean? If you're looking at the 6.39 million, what that means is that Canary Capital saw obviously an inflow of 12.8 million in the inflows on the ETF side. So now they actually need to go and buy this much XRP. And obviously, you could say the same thing on the Bitwise thing. So very impressive numbers. And look what Smoke says. The momentum behind XRP ETFs is only starting to build. Expect this list to expand soon, featuring some of the most influential names in finance. And of course, that's where Franklin Templeton comes into play, which ETF is imminent at this point. So this is something I want you guys to pay attention to, but take a look at the short-term holder supply in profit slash loss ratio. This is the highest short-term holder capitulation ever recorded. 99% of short-term buyers are in loss. Let that sink in. Let's take a closer look and see what's happening. In this specific case, you're seeing the dominance actually picking up. Wow, that's quite interesting to see. You can see for yourself, dominance is actually picking up right now over the last hour or so. Bitcoin, on the other hand, like I said, we did come down to this $82,000 price point. This was an initial wick down, which again is a leading indicator behind this massive liquidation that we just saw. But as far as the trend is concerned, this trend is filled in my opinion, and I wouldn't be surprised if the market were to rebound. But we did come back into the 78.6, so I think we're getting closer and closer to Bitcoin finding a bottom for itself based off of these previous patterns, unless of course Bitcoin decides to go below the 78.6, which we just don't want to see happening. XRP price, on the other hand, you could see for yourself, has dropped below the 0.50 for the first time since June. And yes, that is correct. I am not including the October 10th wick. Again, this happened throughout the market. Not everyone was able to kind of get in around this key range. It was like pretty much lasting 5 minutes. And we did see obviously the market rebounding quite fast. This is the first time where we actually saw the price gradually, retest some of these levels. We broke below here, of course. We came down to $1.83. Like I said, due to that wick down to $82,000. Since then, the price of Bitcoin, the price of XRP has gone up about 6%, pretty much kind of finding itself above the $1.91 key support line. So again, time in, time out, we've spoken about the support line, very important. But right now, what I want you guys to kind of keep in mind is this is a very important support line. But we could see XRP dropping below here and start potentially coming down to the likes of $1.73. That would be the next major support line, in my opinion. If you want to put that into perspective, that itself is a move of about 10%, and that could definitely end up happening if BTC pushes down to like the 75K key range and the dominance continues to pull up. So we got to keep that factor in mind. We'll see what happens. We'll see where the bulls come in play. Obviously, if you look at XRP on the Bitcoin side of things, XRP BTC chart, you're actually still seeing XRP holding better than BTC. So that's something I want you guys to keep in mind. So maybe we might not even come close to that. Maybe if the price of Bitcoin comes down to $78,000, we might still hover around the $1.80-ish cent. But we'll see what happens. But again, if you are thinking about that level, that is not unrealistic by any means. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Love you all. See you later. Crypto ZX, and peace out.